Hi Scrubs, hope you're well. So I'm going to be talking about the new features that have been added to game today. I'm also kind of going to discuss my experience on the last pre-pod, and there is a couple of reasons for this, because when I saw that we were getting these changes for sure last Tuesday, I was quite disappointed. And as I tried to point out in the last video that I covered on this, I was trying to be positive about this. I was trying to say, well, actually, you know what, this might be helpful. But I did see a lot of problems with it, and when I was in the last testing session, it felt just like it wasn't there yet, that it wasn't ready to be here on live servers, and I was kind of like, I'm sure they'll take this feedback and maybe adjust this. But from what I've seen, that hasn't happened, and I'm really disappointed right now. Now I'm going to talk through this and why that is. And I think that even as I talk about this, I don't even think I'm going to be able to think of all the things that could possibly go wrong or might have further reaching consequences, because we've got lots of different servers of lots of different sizes, and you know, that could affect different servers differently. And then there's another thing that I want to talk about that I am annoyed about, and I think quite a few people are annoyed about. Now, the first thing is Emma's competitions for divine horses. Your divine horses are ready for the competition. There are fewer and fewer opponents. How can you be sure you're top level if there are no competitions where you can test yourself? Emma has the solution. Discover Emma's competition for divine horses. If there are no competitions for special horses available, then one of Emma's competitions will appear, allowing your divine horse to take part in a competition anyway. Depending on your horse's level, the difficulty level of Emma's competition will be the lowest possible. This will give you a higher chance of winning. So then we got the Chomping Competitions. Whether you're an aspiring champion or a long-time competitor, you will have your own category. We're well aware of the issue relating to beginner competition. We work to improve this aspect by adding 2 new types of competitions based on your horse's number of wins. You'll be able to participate in only a certain type of competition to increase fairness and achieve an easier block. Competitions will now be divided into 2 categories: competitions for horses with fewer than 20 wins, and competitions for horses with more than 20 wins. So, if your horse is fewer than 20 wins, it goes into that category. If it is more than 20 wins, it goes into the other category. So as a breeder, if your horse is less than 20 wins, you can take part in all competitions for horses with fewer than 20 wins, all competitions in the beginner horses with a certain genetic potential. So if your horse has achieved 20 wins, you can take part in all competitions for horses with at least 20 wins, and the horse will be removed from all pending competitions which are restricted to horses with fewer than 20 wins. So if you have a horse, gets its 20 wins, if it was in any races that were for horses with under 20 wins, it gets kicked out of them, okay? You do not get any compensation for that at all. No ecos compensation, as we discussed in the last video about this. This will make it easier for you to build up your horses. So, as an equestrian center manager, when creating a competition, you must choose the category of horse that will be allowed to participate. Horses with at least 20 wins, horses with fewer 20 wins, beginner horses, special horses, horses in a team, VIP users. Moreover, it is no longer possible to create competitions for beginners and special horses. With this new update, all competitions which are not restricted to beginner horses and special horses or horses in a team will be assigned to a specific category. In other words, a competition with a difficulty level below 34 will turn into a competition for horses with fewer than 20 wins, and competitions with a difficulty level equal to or above 34 will turn into competitions for horses with more than 20 wins. Similarly, current competitions which are restricted to beginner horses will turn into competitions for special horses without the level taken into account. So, we go into the forums and we go to this. This is where I want to talk about it a little bit more, and something else that's happened. So, we've heard your complaints regarding the lack of races for divines and some issues with the balance among participants, making it more difficult to work the horses. So we've created the following new aspects: the races, Emma's special horse as competitions, and competitions are now set for horses with less than 20 wins and ones with more. Now it's this next bit that I want to discuss a little bit as well. So the fodder and wheat bran, we adjusted the prices for fodder and wheat bran. They now cost 2 equus each to buy from the store, and the resale amount will be maintained at 1 equus each. We have been aware that some players were using the low prices for these 2 items to reduce their equus reserve, but it wasn't intended to work this way. We originally wanted to include this change in an extensive review of the Equestrian Center functionality. However, due to the high number of players within the community abusing the flaw, we chose to bring this change forward. Please note that the growing fodder and wheat bran in your center is cheaper than buying it. If you don't have an equestrian center, choose centers to provide food so you don't need to buy it when you're boarding your horses. So, I have a bone to pick with this, and we're going to do that first before I jump back into the competitions and the reason for this. So, by stating that we were exploiting a flaw, it's saying that it's breaking game rules. Never at any point has this been against the rules to buy and sell within the shop. I mean, anybody who wants to save a little bit of Equus is going to think, you know what, it's cheaper to make sure that my Equus stays under 10,000. And a lot of us do, myself included. And we'll put our money into the wheat bran, you know, or fodder, store it like that. And quite a lot of the time, it's not even in large amounts, particularly for me now. And make sure that the foals just cost 100 E with the VAT. And I really just don't see why it has to be labelled as an abuse, because there are other things out there that people do that are automated. There are people who use scripts. There are people who use things to cheat. They don't work manually. I think that if I work really, really hard and I'm doing everything manually, and I think if there's 100 other players that are doing everything manually, and we decide to save a little bit of Equus when we're breeding foals by buying some wheat bran, which we do manually, we're entitled to do so. That's my opinion, right? Somebody over there who's using scripts, who has, you know, was past farming for years and all that, okay, you've stopped that because you've just taken the past horses away. But I don't see why people should be punished for doing something in a game that is a lot to do with economy and working with numbers and trying to save where you possibly can. I really just feel like it's not justified to say it was abuse. If you wanted to say, we're not going to let you do this anymore, that's fine. But I feel like the way that's worded, I don't like how that was worded, and that's what I'm probably making too much of a point of. But I don't think it's justified to say that, because everybody that did that, who's playing the game fairly in every other aspect, and is not cheating with any kind of scripts or bots or things like that, and they're playing within the rules of the game, it just like, it feels like you're kind of labeling people as breaking the rules because they're trying to work efficiently, competitively, and that's the whole point of this game. Like, it's a lot about, you know, getting the most out of as little as possible. That's just the way this game kind of, you know, works. And the other thing as well, and I don't know why this isn't a feature, maybe it's something that they're thinking of doing, there's a lot of other horse games out there right now, a lot of browser ones, where you have a bank system, where you lodge money in a bank and you get maybe a tiny little bit of interest. So we can just look at Horse Reality for an example of that, where you bank money with them. You know, why isn't that a possible option? You know? I mean, I just don't see why this hasn't sort of been thought about, or maybe it is, and personally I think if you were going to do that, you might as well have waited to do that until then, and then I don't think it would have come across this way. But that to me is labeling a lot of players who play within the rules as cheats. And that particular feature has been in the game for bygones. So don't now decide that it's against the rules, okay? And that's all I'm going to say on that. I'm done with that particular topic. Now we're going to go back to the competitions. And there's a lot to talk about here. And I don't even think I'm going to be able to cover all of it. Some of this is based around things that I've sort of thought about, things that I experienced during the testing server, things that you guys have said to me as well. And also things that I kind of maybe hope they might do. And I don't even think, as I said, that I'm going to be able to talk about everything. So, you know, if for anybody out there who runs an EC, if you want rosettes, I think the majority of you are going to set competitions for horses with more than 20 wins. Because rosettes are so heavily reliant on having your races run frequently, and as well as EC prestige and things like that, you're not going to want to wait for the amount of horses that are going to get booted out of the under 20 win competitions for that race to run. So I don't think people are even going to consider that for those running the top ECs. They're just going to go straight with the more than 20 win horses. And same thing for people with Rosette competitions. They're going to set it up for horses with over 20 wins. They're not going to waste their time with that. So that comes into the issue of, and I experienced this on pre-pod, for the races with horses that had less than 20 wins, how long it took for those races to run. Now on certain servers that's going to be less of an issue. Big servers probably will have enough horses going through. But the likes of the small servers, I feel like the waiting times for those races are going to be quite a lot. And, you know, how long those competitions take to run are going to have a big impact. They're going to affect how long it takes you to build up your horse. They're going to affect, possibly, if an EC does decide to go with, you know, under 20 wins, they're going to see that. They're going to be like, oh, it's taking longer for my competitions to run, because horses get booted out. And the other thing is, obviously, fillers. Like, I use a lot of filler horses. I'm sure that they consider those an exploit as well, in some shape or form. And any filler horses that have 20 wins, a lot of teams that use filler horses, a lot of teams use past blops as filler horses. That is gone. Because one thing a lot of teams will do is teams will often enter the same competition types. So let's say you have a VIP team and they're entering the same show jumping competitions, and they blop all day, and there's lots of blops going through there. Once each of those blops has 20 wins, it goes out of those competitions. Now, rather than before, they would have been sitting there and they would have brought in, you know, like, let's say one player had blopped 2 horses in a row and they're sitting in those competitions, those extra ones. Somebody else comes along, does an auto, and then somebody else comes along, does another one. You know, essentially what happened is they would have cleared those competitions themselves. I'm sure there would have been a couple of other people in there too, but they would have cleared those competitions themselves. Now what's going to happen is, first player will enter, get the wins eventually, and get booted out of those, and it'll just continue. So those competitions won't run as much, and they won't be clearing horses out as well. And that's what I think could possibly happen with that. And if you have filler horses that have 20 wins, they're essentially useless to you. If you're not using past blops, for example. I have a lot of horses that don't have wins, and then I have ones that do. And I found this, like, nearly impossible to test on pre-pod. I got very frustrated because that video that I posted up for you guys was extremely short compared to the amount of footage I had. I had over an hour's worth of footage from pre-pod. And a lot of it I found was unusable because I ended up finding quite a few things that were wrong. And I was like, I'm sure I'll not put that in because I'm sure they'll maybe fix it. And now I regret not keeping that footage. You know. Because horses were getting constantly removed, and then pre-pod, if you compare pre-pod maybe to like the smallest server out there, like pre-pod maybe has like 150 or something people on it at the best of times, and they're not always on at the same time, so it's very hard to test, and that's why I find it very frustrating, and I am aware of that. It's a very small amount of players, and I feel like maybe they should have opened it up to a lot more people to maybe test it more efficiently. And then I actually had a horse that I put in to Western competitions, and then switched discipline over to cross country, and it got its wins in cross country, and it remained in all of the under 20 win competitions in Western. Now, I am assuming they fixed that, because I did report that as a bug. So, basically, this is where I'm sort of seeing possible issues. You know, it could be extremely slow, and it's going to make a lot of filler horses for people useless. And I do, as I said, and I made this very clear in the last video, I do like the intention of separating the horses to help the bloppers avoid skillers. That I do not in any way argue with. But I don't feel satisfied with the tests that were done with pre-pod. I really don't think that this has been, in my mind, had enough testing really at this point to have gone on the live servers just yet. I didn't feel that it was working properly enough. And as I said, this was one of the first test sessions where I've completely fell out of whack with it. And I feel like small servers are going to have high waiting times in their competitions and their blopping and so forth. And I think I pointed this out to one of you guys. I don't understand why they maybe won't consider doing a double system for ECs where, you know, you could have both type of competitions for the EC. So if I like set up competitions for horses with 70% in a particular skill, why I couldn't have 2 competitions, one for 20 and one for, you know, fewer. Because the horses are still going to have the same skills, it's just going to be a case of one of them's going to have 20 wins and one's not. It's not going to drag down that, as long as they make it, but it doesn't. I know they'd have to adjust it a little bit, but I can't understand why they didn't do that, because that would have increased the number of competitions available to start with. You know, and I do think a lot of people are going to take their horses that way, and their competitions that way, towards the over 20 wins, because they're not going to want to sit and wait for an under 20 win competition to run. Now, one of the things I sort of wondered would they consider doing is, like, what if a competition hasn't run in 2 days, or let's say 3 days? Personally, I'm kind of like around the 2 mark, but if a competition hasn't run within, like, say 2 days, if there's at least one horse in that competition I think should be forced to run. I mean, obviously the horse is going to win because it's the only horse in the competition. If they want to randomize it a little bit more, they could do that. But I think that if they had a system like that, where if there's a horse in a competition, that competition could... Because at the minute, like, a horse could be in a competition for a month, hypothetically. If it's the only horse in the competition, nobody else enters it, I think there should be a system where it forces the competitions to run, regardless of how many horses are in it. Or, well, this is kind of the more complicated version, I don't really think they'd do it, to have... Like, because they've gone with eye competitions, why don't they have eye filler horses that go into the competitions after a certain amount of time, make them run? You know, just an idea. Because I feel like it might help towards a couple of these things. But to take this all into context, right? They took away the pass horses, which meant we lost passes every month. They've changed the competitions, and you don't get any compensation if you're kicked out, and a lot of us do enter more than 20 whenever we're trying to get wins. So you lose an equus. And now we can't even store our equus' fodder or wheat bran, you know, to reduce cost of covering a horse. You know, so it kind of feels like we're just having resources just dragged out from underneath us. And if we come back to the objectives, and I am going to do a video on the objectives because I've been keeping a note of every single objective that I've got since the change came in. I've been asked to open luck items, I've been asked to dehorn unicorns, I've been asked to breed unicorns, I've been asked to use black market items twice in the same day. You know, buy horses I don't need or want. Like, it just feels like the last couple of weeks, like, it's just more and more resources, just, you know, I don't know. That's the impression I'm getting. You guys, I really want to know your thoughts. Please leave them in the comments below. Anyway, scrubs, I'm gonna leave it there. I hope you had a lovely day. Bye guys!